Hurricane 2005 continues. Once again, here's Brian Norcross.
Ivan was incredibly strong, reaching Category 5 strength in the Caribbean. It had hit the small island of Grenada hard, damaging virtually every building and leaving thousands homeless and hungry. By the time Ivan reached the Gulf Coast and met up with our Brian Andrews, it was a slightly weaker but still frightening storm. They came ashore in the dark of night.
The scariest thing about covering a storm, especially at night, is you can't see it coming. You can't see the stuff flying through the air, but you can hear it. And you're hearing glass shatter, and you're hearing large pieces of plastic or roofing or metal siding slamming up against cars and buildings. And you don't know if it's 5 feet away from you or 20 feet away from you, because you can't see anything in the middle of the night. That was really scary. Each storm is unique because there are moments from each storm that you remember. But remembering back to covering Ivan, it was just the fear factor, the sound of the wind and the debris, the late hour that the storm came in. It was late at night and in the middle of the night when this thing was really unleashing its fury on the part of Alabama that I was in, on the Florida Panhandle. And to compare it to other storms, sure, so here in South Florida we've seen awful storms like Andrew, but for the Mobile and for the Pensacola area, this was their Andrew.
When Hurricane Jean came along and headed for the already battered Treasure Coast, our team there was JAWAN STRADER, Art Barron, and Shomari Stone.
Hurricane Jean, I was in STUART covering it. I was at a hotel. So what I would try to do is use that hotel as a barrier to break the storm in order to protect myself when I'm covering it.
We're off a federal highway in Stewart, right next to the Holiday Inn. A lot of devastation already starting. We'll show you a little bit here. We'll show you this gas station right here, which was actually damaged from Hurricane Francis, but you can still see some of the damage Hurricane Jean is causing to it.
I was sleeping in my room, minding my own business, taking a break from the chaos going on outside. And all of a sudden, I decided to get up and I walked downstairs. I then walked back upstairs and I couldn't open my door. It was as if the wind was just pushing against the door. I wasn't sure what was going on. You know, here I am, I'm a big guy and I'm trying to put the key in and the wind was just so strong. Well, I finally get the door open, cameras are rolling, and whoosh, just wind just coming in and out of that place. Windows shattered. The entire room was just drenched with water. It was unbelievable. My boots, my rain gear, everything, my, underwear, everything was soaked. And it just shows that, how dangerous the situation can be.
When we were in Sebastian, photographer Manel Kalu and I were stationed at this particular motel. And there was one part of it on one side of the road, the other closest to the water. And that night, the winds got up to 125 miles an hour. And all of a sudden, you start hearing some noises, some bangs, pops, that type of thing. It wasn't really dramatic, but you start hearing these sounds. About 5 minutes later, Manel comes down. I'm down on the ground floor with other people. And it's like he gets seen a ghost. He's going, Art, things are falling around me. On my bed, wind, water, things that I'm not used to falling on me when I'm sleeping. And he was genuinely frightened. The hotel that we were staying in was literally being ripped apart by 125-mile-an-hour winds from Jean when it struck Sebastian. We immediately went on the air on the phone. That was the only phone that was working. It was a landline. All cell phone was out. At this point, there was no power. We had little lanterns. And we called into the station, and we're talking to the early morning crew who had been talking about keeping folks abreast of what was going on with Hurricane Jean. And Manel gets on the line, and you can hear the nervousness in his voice because he was in shock. He realized that he could have been killed.
And anchoring our coverage for hours on end, of course, were ROBB HANRAHAN and Maggie Rodriguez.
This studio was like our second home. We were here all the time.
We were.
12-hour shifts, nonstop.
We decided that for continuity's sake, it was easier for us to stay on the air for 12 hours at a time than to take breaks. and lose track of what was happening.
So we were here 12 hours, no breaks. We had our dinners on the set while Brian was giving his report. We literally lived here. When Brian was giving his forecast, we would take turns running to the bathroom.
Yeah, one of us would stay here, and then give the other one a chance to go out, maybe stretch your legs a little bit. I like to stand up every once in a while, you know, because your legs would fall asleep sitting there for 12 hours. But we just felt that the continuity of us being there was more important than taking an hour or two off.
And people would ask us, aren't you tired? How can you do that? And you are tired, but you want to be here, because once you get into the flow and you know that you're providing a service, you just want to stay and see it through. You want to help the people.
Because if you don't know what happened last hour or 2 hours ago, it's very hard to predict, especially when you get to the heart of these storms as they're tracking in, and we're watching Brian and paying attention to exactly where the storms are and where the wind is picking up. It just gave us a lot more information to use by just being right here all the time. The thing about hurricanes, I think, is what precedes the hurricane, the amount of tension there is in the preparation. And we're there to just keep everybody on track and keep everything calm, and I just was glad to be a part of it. I really felt like we provided a great service.
Me too, and I hope that our viewers learned that when hurricane season arrives, CBS 4 will be there.
Brian Norcross returns with a final thought when Hurricane 2005 returns.